engineer for the Texas Department of Transportation, the Austin District. Tucker oversees some of Texas's largest transportation projects, but he's especially recognized for his leadership in times of crisis. After the major flooding that washed out key bridges and isolated communities, he led rapid engineering efforts that restored access far faster than expected and strengthened infrastructure for the future. His work shows how engineering directly serves the people and supports humanitarian relief. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tucker Ferguson.
Thank you, Betsy, and great to be here. And Jillian, really appreciate the invitation. This is fantastic, a chance to speak to future engineering students and just share some of my experiences of how I've got to where I am in my career. And just a little bit about me. I'm again Tucker Ferguson. I'm the district engineer for TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation here in the Austin District. And I am a civil engineer by education and by trade and by experience. And why engineering? It was something that interested me for many years. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I've been in Texas now for about 14 years. But growing up around the highway industry and engineering and civil engineering was just in my background and something I was always very interested in. And why do we select engineering as a profession? Many times it's number one, engineers by nature are problem solvers. And we do that with a lot of math and science. So a lot of those things lined up for me in my elementary and middle school and high school education and even into college. So being good at math, good at science, and wanting to solve problems through engineering and science, it just lined up for me. So the little piece of advice that I could give of potential engineers and going into the engineering field is load up on those science and math courses in high school, and sometimes they can translate into even dual credits in college. But get all the experience as you can in getting the math and science in your curriculum, and take advantage of internships at a variety of companies or state agencies. I know Pennsylvania, I had 4 years of internships with different agencies, and in Texas, we hire a lot of interns, and it really gives you a lot of good experience and finding out what you like, maybe what you don't like, and moving further into your career. And finally, surrounding yourself and identifying mentors and people that you can learn from with good habits and bad habits, and identifying those things that you may want to avoid in the future. So that's very important as well in finding those mentors. And the last thing I can say about the education and at least in the civil engineering field, is pursuing your professional licensing. So being a professional engineer just opens all kinds of opportunities, regardless of what flavor of engineering you go into. It's very important to be licensed so you can take that next step into management, into leadership, or even pursuing the technical part of it if that's what you desire to do in your career. So at the Department of Transportation, one of the main goals we have of developing highways and bridge programs is really improving the quality of life of travelers. And I would imagine that there's not a person on this call today that has gotten to where they are today and every day by going over a highway or using the highway system. And what is also paramount to that is not only moving across the highway, but doing it safely. So really, we are in the public service sector, and moving people efficiently across the highways and doing it safely. And one of the things that you really don't get involved with a lot in your career through the education effort, but we do certainly in the public sector at a DOT or Department of Transportation, and that is emergency response. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about what we were able to do with this bridge replacement project that was wiped out in the floods of the July 4th weekend with us. And I'm going to share my screen. So I'd ask for confirmation once I get this shared that we make sure we can see my presentation. I have a little bit of trouble with the button that go on below.
No worries. Well, you're getting that. I just have to say, improving the quality of life, like you said, that was just incredible. And, sometimes we can overlook it here in the United States with how well our roads and infrastructure function, but it's due to people like you that have brought it in connecting us to other areas. So just thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna try to share this again. Sorry.
Of course, you're good.
Yeah, I think the really engineers at the basic level is improving quality of life. That's what we're really trying to do. And that's the bottom line of everything that we stand for, and doing it using math and science.
Exactly. And this time I see on the left-hand side, I can see the Cow Creek Bridge, and on the right, I think I can see some of your notes in that.
And that is what I'm trying not to share to get
Gotcha.
rid of my notes. So let me try this again.
As you're working on that, I know students out there, can you imagine if an entire bridge or road like you just saw was offset and all of a sudden you couldn't connect to either your school or your sports team or whatever it is that you are involved in, that it could take you an extra hour to get to where you need to go just to do your normal functions. And from what I understand, that's exactly what was happening down here in the Texas community. And that the Texas Department of Transportation had to really help connect those communities back up again. So it's pretty impressive. It's funny, one of our questions actually came from Washington Heights Academy in New York, and they had asked us, how can engineering teach us to become better problem solvers? And I think this is just such a great example right here. We're problem solving in our situation right now. But in general, what you were doing in Texas down there with all of those roads, having flooded and just been knocked off of their infrastructure. Having to problem solve that as well was just incredible what your teams were able to accomplish in such a quick time in order
It,
to,
it,
you know,
it certainly is. Yeah. And that's like I said, that's what we do. That's problem solving is in our nature, and we're looking to solve problems every day. So hopefully I can solve this problem because my presentation is really cool and I got a really cool video of it. So let me try this again.
sure thing.
And Mr. Ferguson, whenever you share your screen, as a reminder, the presentation needs to be open. So make sure the presentation is open somewhere on your screen. Then come back to Zoom. When you click the share screen button, you should be able to click on your presentation.
Okay.
And if it's easier too, you're welcome to email it to us and we can share from our side and I can ask you some of the student questions in the meantime.
It is such a large file that
Okay.
it's not going to be able to do that. I apologize.
No, you're
We did have
totally.
it working. Yeah, we did have it working. So
Now you just need to slide it over. So we see the one slide, I think, once you
Like
present.
present your view on the bottom right down by the minus sign. I think that should do it for you. Yeah, awesome. Looks good.
let's stick with that and not hit any more buttons. Okay, so as I said before, emergency response really is not something that we we deal with in school that to really think about, but that's one of the most important things that we do, that the government agencies are always looking to keep our roads open, keep them safe, whether it's, and I'm not sure if I mentioned my background, but being from Pennsylvania, a large part of emergency response was snow removal. And then in the Northeast, in the northern part of the U.S., winter services is major of what we do. Now down here in the South, we're more responsive to flooding and wildfires or those kind of things. But anytime there's something that affects the transportation system, we are quickly to respond and make sure we get it back open and safely move people from point A to point B of where they need to go. So this was the bridge project, or the bridge that was washed out due to the floods in the July 4th weekend. And just a little bit about our district. We are one of 25 districts in Texas. We cover 11 counties, and this flooding event happened in the western part of our district. So those 5 counties there in the western part of that map is where the predominant of the flooding events and the heavy rainfalls. But we have over 570 employees and cover 9,400 square miles. So it's a very large area and a very diverse area that we have here in the Austin district. So as you can see, again, one of the things that we don't normally get involved with during our educational efforts, but we quickly become experts or semi-experts in, is being weather forecasters. We are always watching the weather, and these were some of the weather forecasts and predictions that we received during the flooding event of July 4th. And as you can see, we got some places with 15, 20 inches of rain. And whenever you have that much rainfall coming down in a short amount of time in an area that is very hilly and has a lot of terrain, that creates a lot of flash flooding, which is what happened in this area with the Cow Creek Bridge. So the damages, as I said, were predominantly in the western part of our district in those 5 areas. We had 33 roadway locations damaged, worth about $12 million worth of damage. And most of them were roadways, bridges that washed away, and other collection of debris. And the most notable was at the Cow Creek Bridge. And this was a picture that I took on July 6th when I arrived at the location at Cow Creek. And you can see the roadway in front of me was completely washed away. And we knew we had to get a team out there and start repairing this thing as quickly as possible. And this is just some drone footage. So what was really cool is we used our drone capabilities to capture a lot of the places that we couldn't get to. And this shot of the equipment out there was actually the Monday following the washout over the weekend. And we didn't know what the size of this bridge was going to be. We didn't know what the height of it. But one thing we did know is if we were going to replace this thing quickly, we had to get out there with a contractor and remove the debris and the pieces of the bridge that were in the creek, so we could get there working as quickly as possible. So this operation took about a week's worth of removal, just breaking up the pieces of the bridge that were in the creek and get them removed so we could have a clean slate. So once we had a contractor in place, they could go in and hit the ground running and start right away. So just a little bit about the location. Cow Creek is on RM, or Ranch to Market 1431, and it is between 2 counties, Travis County for us, whereas the Austin region is very populated in Travis County, and it moves into a more rural area in Burnett County, or Marble Falls on the west side. But one of the things that was mentioned before, Betsy, that was a very large burden is the detour for this bridge being out was about 40 miles long. And with traffic, it took well over an hour to just traverse the detour to get from one point to the other point on the other side of the bridge. And this happened in July. We knew school was starting to get ready to get back into session in mid-August. And we were really pushing to get this back open by the time the school buses were going to run on our RM 1431. We didn't quite make it for the start of school, but it was only a few days that the school buses needed to use this detour. So it was very important, not only for traffic and commerce, for people to be able to get back on RM 1431 and not have to use this 40-mile detour, but with school coming in session, it was extremely important for us.
Wow.
So what we did, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, wow, that's so impressive.
So what we did right out of the gate was to get our teams gathered together, and we were having multiple meetings every day. And this is just some shots of the meetings we had with our design team, our construction team, our maintenance team. And we were able to assemble our contracts on. So the picture on the lower left-hand side there was a week after the bridge was washed away, and we had our plans and our design almost finished. We met on a Saturday morning with our contractors on site with our plans that we had in place, and met with them at the location to show them what we were doing, show them what we needed, and to get feedback on our design plan so we could go the following week to open bids and get the contract in place so we could hit the ground running. So this is just some details of the bridge that that washed out and that we replaced. So while we were there, we brought it to current standards, and we went from a more narrow bridge to a wider bridge, and made it taller and stronger so we could withstand the floodwaters that came down and washed out the original bridge. One of the things that was very important was that on this was we had 5 piers or 5 sets of columns in the channel on the old bridge, and we lengthened the beams and went to 3 spans, and we had only 2 columns, and they were much more robust and larger from the standpoint. So I believe the diameter of the shafts on the columns of the previous bridge were 24 inches in diameter. The new bridge were 48 inches in diameter. So we doubled the size and fortified the foundations of this bridge so it could withstand this type of flooding event in the future. And this is a timeline from when the bridge was destroyed to when it was opened. And I know this may not mean a lot if you're not familiar with how long it takes to construct a project, but a project of this type would probably, under normal circumstances, take 12 to 18 months to design, get the bridge beams fabricated and delivered and built. And one of the key factors to this is on a normal project, so we would design it, put it out to bids for a contractor, they would bid on it, and then they would design the beams, the concrete beams, and they would have to get built. And that can take any time from 4 to 6 months. The whole key to making this project go faster, and you'll hear about it in the video at the end, was we were able to find concrete beams that were already fabricated and cast and in play and ready to go for another project. We actually borrowed, stole, took, whatever you want to call it, but we stole those beams from another project, and we designed this bridge around the size of those beams, which really expedited the overall construction and development of this. But you can see we were able to do this in about 45 days, whereas it would normally take 12 to 18 months. And the only thing I can compare this to is you go out and drive the roads and you see a construction project on the roadways in your community. They can linger and they can take months and months and even years to get done. We were able to accomplish this in about 45 days from the time the bridge washed out till we got it open. So very pleased with that. And that's really the crux of this entire program, is to get this open as quickly as possible to open this road back up for our communities. So we began construction on July 21st, 2 weeks basically after it was built. And we were out there with these drilling rigs. And what I'd like to point out is in the background of this, you can still see the vegetation and the devastation and just the height of the floodwaters that came through this entire channel to wipe out this bridge. But we were out there with 2 drill rigs. They started drilling the foundations for the columns or for the piers. And we had 2 because we wanted to make sure that if one of these broke down, we had a backup to get in there. We wanted no delays on this project. So the contractor came out with 2 drill rigs to make sure we got the foundations drilled timely. And also the stone that you see in here is a temporary crossing that they put in place to move equipment from one side of the creek to the other. So on August 5th, 2 weeks after we started the drilling of the drill rigs, you can see these beams, which again, we got from another project. These were slated for another project. We were able to acquire those, design our bridge around the size of these beams, and had these in place in one day on August 5th. And there's 15 of those, so 3 spans, 5 beams each. Placed these on August 5th. And then on August 12th, just a week later, we poured the deck. Now, the one thing that you'll notice about this is we were running a 24-hour operation, but we specifically placed the deck, the concrete deck, overnight because in August in Texas, temperatures typically get to well over 100 degrees on a daily basis. In this concrete placement, we don't want to place that in the heat of the day. So overnight, it gets to about 75 or 80 degrees, and it's not into the hundreds. And that's the ideal time for placing concrete decking material. So we did this overnight from about 11 o'clock at night into early overnight hours into the early morning, got it placed when the temperatures are right. So really the weather throughout this entire time cooperated with us, but we had to make some adjustments of when we placed materials to make sure that we did it in the right window of time of when the temperatures were going to cooperate for us. And then just about 2 weeks later, we opened this bridge and cut the ribbon on August 19th. So we put this contract in place for a 60-day contract, and the contractor really got it done in 30 days, and we incentivized them to do that, and they actually got about $1 million bonus for opening it up early and hitting our timelines. One of the other things that is very important in everything that we do, and there's a lot of interest in the types of work we do, but especially on this one, is doing a lot of social media. And our public information officer was giving updates with video several times a week because it was rapidly happening so fast that she wanted to make sure that she got out there and put things on Twitter or X or Instagram and Facebook, and it really kept the public involved. And this was a huge issue for us, or a huge accomplishment, because it was very well received and the public was very interested. And Kellen Moorman, our public information officer, gained thousands of followers just in these couple of weeks alone. So it was a very successful PR campaign, just keeping folks informed of what the progress was and how we were moving so quickly. And here's a couple of, and I'll put a shameless plug in for following our social media. So if anybody wants to take some pictures of this, or I think our presentation is going to be available after this, they can join us and follow what's happening in the Austin district.
It has been and continues to be a very hard time for Central Texas. The worst began in Kerr County. Then today, Williamson, Burnett, and parts of Travis counties all getting slammed with flash flooding and heavy rainfall.
I got a video early that morning from my maintenance supervisor that showed the bridge being out.
I still remember, fielding all those phone calls and really just trying to wrap my mind around the amount of devastation that we were hearing and seeing out in the field.
Everyone's on high alert. They understand, the severity.
At that point, we all mobilized to the area office, myself, director of maintenance, and the other maintenance crews, and just started formalizing a plan.
What do we need to do? How quick can we respond? How do we help the community? And what do we do to support each other throughout this event?
Rescue crews have been deployed to key areas including Sandy Creek, Cow Creek, and the San Gabriel River.
One of our lake patrol boats is out with Parks and Wildlife searching the Cow Creek area because of the roadways have been washed away.
When I arrived at Cow Creek, I was met with several of the first responders who were looking for those who had gone missing. They were out trying to find not only the folks who were missing, but some of their partners. So that really took a different perspective for me beyond just the transportation infrastructure that we were there to try to fix. But that same afternoon, we had a conference call and getting the direction from the governor's office that challenged us to get this thing rebuilt as soon as possible.
I was doing some stuff with my family, got a phone call. Tucker said, at that point, I didn't know that the bridge had washed out. And so said, hey, we actually had a structure that we lost. I want to get you in this call with administration. We got to start talking about what we're going to do to rebuild it. First thing that went through my mind was knowing that we lost a bridge, right? You got to find those materials, those parts. Otherwise, we can't put it together fast. The first step that I knew I had to take was make those phone calls. One of the beautiful things about working at TxDOT is that you build a family outside of TxDOT, right? And so I've got relationships with so many of our Central Texas contractors, material providers. When I woke up the next morning, I already had 4 contacts that said, we know we have beams or we have materials at this yard of this size.
Around a dozen streets remain blocked off. Some are still flooded while others are broken up into pieces.
FM 1431 is still closed at Cow Creek.
Today, crews are there removing debris and preparing the site for what TxDOT leaders call an expedited replacement.
You think about closure for those that are impacted. A lot of that goes to just reestablishing roadways, having the ability to get their kids to school, to travel into town, go to the grocery store. We needed to do everything we could to help them restore their lives as quick as possible.
We would have these kind of alignment meetings every morning, and then the teams would go off and do what they needed to, but nobody was waiting. They were doing it as soon as possible.
We go into that first Monday morning meeting, and the team says, we really want what they call TX28, so they're shorter. I knew I couldn't get those, but I could get a little taller one, and my response was, if we're gonna do this fast, you gotta do it with the materials we got. So I go back and I ask our material supplier, whose beams are those? And that was when he told me that they were a Yoakum project.
Willie called me, and it was definitely a surprise.
You need what? Right? You need to do what?
Based on his tone, I knew there was something serious going on, because typically we tend to exchange a few jabs before we get down to business.
So I told him what we were doing, the issues, the challenges we had. He, within 30 minutes, talked to his area engineer who was managing that job, figured out the schedule to determine if us taking those beams would impact their project.
We felt like the need was greater versus our project where we're building, new lanes to an existing facility. We responded back to Willie and his team that, hey, just let us know what you need and we'll work with you.
We were able to rock and roll from there.
Our bridge teams with the Austin District of the Texas Department of Transportation have been working literally 24/7 to design a new bridge to replace that bridge that was washed out. We've released those bids to contractors now that we have a complete design in hand. And then after we award that contract, we will begin the process of transitioning from the debris removal contract to the construction work on the new bridge.
There was no hesitation that weekend and in the weeks following. Nobody blinked when they had to work weekends, late into evenings to put these packages together to get it to construction.
It was evident that dedication was part of it and genuine care.
There was a lot of talent. There was a lot of skill. There was a lot of brain power in that room every day. There's no doubt about it. But they came together as a family and they figured out how to solve that problem and let no obstacle get in their way, which is pretty amazing.
Happening today, reconstruction begins on the RM 1431 bridge over Cow Creek.
TxDOT has awarded an emergency contract to Hunter Industries.
The crew has an unheard of 60-day deadline to get the bridge finished.
One of the things we were able to do is secure concrete beams from another project that we've designed this bridge to match those beams. On a typical project, they need to get designed, fabricated, and shipped to us. That can take up to 6 months. There's no way we'd have been able to meet the schedule that we put out.
I mean, it was like a well-oiled machine. At times they were working 24 hours a day, the contractor. So we had somebody out there almost always to help see the project through. Some of them, they were doing everything they can to be out there. They wanted to be out there. They care about quality of work and the project, and they're a resilient group, absolutely.
A TxDOT spokesperson tells us they're on track to complete the bridge by September 9th or earlier.
Good morning. I want to welcome you all here for what is an amazing event.
We had well over 100 folks involved in the flood response and all pulling together to get this bridge built as quickly as we could.
The trust that all of our teams have for each other and with each other.
That just truly shows care for the district, for what we do.
We were all already really close as a district, but during this time frame, it was really neat to see how much closer we came and worked together as a team to deliver.
It just goes to show how key it is to be someone that folks can trust, that you trust them and they trust you, and that you can work together to solve a problem.
You realize that you've done something pretty remarkable, right? You've made it through all those days, you've helped the community, you've helped each other, and really just done what we needed to do as fellow Texans.
And really, again, the timeline is so compressed from what normally it takes this kind of thing to do. But I think you got a sense that this was a total team effort, and we can't do anything by ourselves. And as engineers, we'll quickly learn that the teamwork is is really the key to everything, and have everybody pulling their parts. And I grew up playing sports all my life, and a lot of how I manage and how I learn leadership is through teamwork and team sports. I mean, you learn how everybody works together to do their part. You learn how to win. You learn how to lose. You learn how to adjust mid-game to do different things. And all of that was on display this entire time through everything we do, but especially in getting this bridge across the finish line. So there are some members of our team right there, but I do want, on my last slide right here, just point out that the community appreciated our effort as well. And you can see behind in this picture, the bridge is not nearly complete, but the community came out and were delivering drinks and waters and cookies and just different things to our group that were out there, again, around the clock to show their appreciation. And that's what really gives us the satisfaction of being public servants and doing what we do to improve the quality of life through transportation programs and transportation projects that we're able to deliver. So, Betsy, with that, that's the end of my slides. I will stop sharing my screen and get back to the presentation mode.
Yes.
Happy
Oh my
to take any questions from you or from the group if we have time.
Fantastic, Tucker. I am just blown away by all of the things that you and your team have been able to accomplish. Some of the students have submitted us questions, and one of the ones that was submitted real time today was from Mr. Lee's class in MHS. They said, "It is so impressive that you can build the bridge so fast. Is it making a world record in building an infrastructure so big so quickly?" Do you have any idea on that?
We don't really keep records of how fast we've built bridges. However, anybody who's been around here for any length of time said this is by far the fastest that a bridge has been built. Now, the question that I need to continue answering is, why can't you do all your projects this fast? And they see that we can do it in 45 days. Well, there's a lot of things that have to line up. And one of those is getting an emergency declaration by the governor, or anytime there's a hurricane, you see emergency declarations by the president or certain governors or even elected officials. And that allows us to use non-traditional methods of getting contracts in place. We don't have to do the typical advertising. So we can compress all of that. So unfortunately, it takes a disaster for us to be allowed to use some of those contracting mechanisms. But that is a frequent question I get. Well, why can't you do all of your projects this fast? And it's really not possible. And unfortunately, certain things have to happen to allow us to use these mechanisms that we did use in this case. But yeah, there's nobody around that can remember anything being done quite this fast, even under the emergency declaration procedures.
Of course, of course. You know what you said there about how things enabled you and your team to be able to do this. I think in some of our deepest disasters comes the biggest inspiration for teamwork in human achievement. And it's just so true in the things that you were able to do and accomplish. It's just incredible. So we did have a couple other questions. What environmental considerations were taken into account while building or rebuilding this bridge?
That's a great question, because anytime, especially when you're working over water, and this is a pristine waterway, so we wanted to make sure that that our contractor did everything that we normally do on a project to make sure that they don't add to the pollution. So as you can imagine, when floodwaters come through, there's a lot of sediment, there's a lot of dirt and just debris that comes into the waterway. And what we do is we have our what we call best management practices for environmental. And anytime we're doing this, we make sure we don't drop certain materials or chemicals, or if it does enter into the stream, that we clean those up as quickly as possible, get them out and get them taken care of, because the last thing we want to do is cause any additional pollution over and above what was done during the flooding event. And we certainly have those practices, and we have those best management practices in place for all of our contracts every time we do a contract. So the contractor knows what they need to do to make sure they keep the streams pristine and clean, and it just rolls into these emergency projects as well. They use those best management practices on all of their contracts.
Oh, that's so good. So there was another question that we had, and that meteorology can be a really important aspect of humanitarian engineering. What are ways that we're able to like assess our bridges, and have we done further assessment maybe in Texas or even in other states to check if our bridges are able to withstand these, it seems like ever increasing floods and disasters that seem to be happening?
So it's a federal government policy that all bridges, regardless if it's a state bridge or a local bridge, are inspected on a 2-year cycle. So we're always doing inspections, and if we identify deficiencies or things that need to be repaired, we will go out there and get contracts, or if we can do it with our own forces, do those repairs. And some of those repairs are related to the foundational elements to make sure that there's scour that's taken care of, that if a water event or a flood event comes through, that it's not susceptible to that. Unfortunately, there are some weather events that are just so severe. This is a case of those that the bridges cannot withstand that. So we do what we can to make sure they're fortified and protected against flooding events, but sometimes the weather events are just too great for us to do that. So, but back to your question on meteorology, we have a number of different weather services in addition just to the local weather services and through the news media that we monitor. We contract with several that'll give us some even more in-depth look aheads of hurricane seasons or rain or even snow events. But what we do is in advance of that, we are always putting plans in place to say, if an event happens here, this is how we'll respond. This is how we'll attack that. And it's especially important during winter weather. We have equipment, materials, people all lined up that if we see the forecast coming 2-3 days ahead, we can make sure that we have our shifts in place and people are in place to run around the clock and apply those materials. But being in Texas and on the coast, hurricane planning is very important for us, not only for our infrastructure, but for evacuations. Many times weather and hurricane events are so severe that a local jurisdiction will want to evacuate their folks. So we need to make sure our roadways are clear, that shoulders are clear and swept off, because sometimes we will run evacuation lanes or evacu lanes to get people out of harm's way and get them to a safe location. So weather is very important in what we do. We monitor it all the time and try to stay ahead and plan as much as possible, and then work that plan. And then it always seems to change on us. So we need to be very agile and flexible as the weather events happen and adjust to whatever's happening in the event.
Yeah, so true and so good. There was another question from Renaissance Academy, and that is, how are you ensuring safety? So I think this is kind of getting to like maybe factors of safety, or what things are you testing to know that a bridge is safe?
So the reconstruction of this bridge, when Willie in our video talked about our director of construction, Willie Samore, talked about getting larger beams, and this bridge is talking of factors of safety is over designed, is what I'll say. It's very fortified to handle any kind of flood event that like we saw in the July 4th flood. But typically a factor of safety on bridges is always 2.5, meaning that it's double of what a normal structure like that would be. But what I would also, if I can take the opportunity to talk about safety, every project we do has a safety element to it. Whether it's a roadway project of removing roadside obstacles, we want to make sure that we are providing a safe environment for people to drive across our roadways. And we analyze all of our crashes, all of our fatal crashes on our roadway system. And especially with the group that I'm talking to right now, the 3 most common factors of roadway crashes and fatalities that we're seeing here in our district are excessive speeding, distracted driving, and folks not wearing their seatbelts. Believe it or not, in Texas, we have only about 10% of people don't wear their seatbelts, but those account for like almost 50% of the fatal crashes that we see. And I know my generation and the generation we have growing up right now is pretty common to wear seatbelts, but just the small percentage of folks that don't accounts for just an unordinary percentage of the fatalities that we see on our roadways. So just those behavioral kind of things can really reduce the crashes and the fatalities that we see on our roadways. So it's not just factors of safety in the structures we build, but just many times behavioral things that drivers and passengers and vehicles are not doing that they should be doing can really cut down on the number of crashes and fatalities that we see.
Yeah, so true. So, Mr. Ferguson, we also have lots of students here, and they may be sitting here and thinking, I want to help in efforts. I want to make sure this never happens again. I want to be a part of building our infrastructure back stronger and better. Do you have any advice for them on how they might be able to go about, seeking engineering or other activities that they might do to help better prepare themselves?
Yeah, so the whole engineering curriculum, as I mentioned before, I think builds towards a career of helping people and using science and math to do that. So if you're inclined to those fields, engineering is a fantastic field to pursue. But as you get into the curriculum into college and into the workforce, and I can only speak for my two experiences working in Pennsylvania DOT for 22 years and now here at Texas DOT for 14 years. There are a lot of internship opportunities where you can come along and be part of our workforce and be part of these solutions and work towards solving these problems and possibly even being part of some of these emergency responses to help people. But even the day-to-day things that we are doing, I always like to encourage our workforce and our team to say, look, what we do matters to people's lives every single day, whether you're filling potholes or whether you're designing bridges or you're in environmental engineering. We have environmental engineers and making sure that the water stays clean and the air stays clean and our endangered species are not becoming more endangered. So we're taking care of that. Everything that we do improves the quality of life. And those internship opportunities for college students and even high school students are plenty here in Texas. They were in Pennsylvania. And I would imagine that state departments of transportation all across the country welcome engineering interns to come in because that's our workforce of the future. So even if it isn't a state agency, I'm sure there are many companies who do work for us, hire engineering interns as well to help grow their careers and look for future employment opportunities.
So good. It's so funny you say that because I actually worked when I was in my first couple years of college. I actually worked at the Ohio Department of Transportation as one of the interns. So definitely I can totally relate to what you're saying. I also love that you just said, what we do matters. And it matters in the Department of Transportation and it matters in our classrooms. Like what you're doing and the things that you're learning and exposing yourselves to now, it absolutely matters. It's shaping who you are. And I think that's just so important to highlight as well. So regarding this, I can't even imagine what you must have been feeling. This is like a moment that probably defines your entire career, something that you could never predict. And yet you're faced with this like immense, human situation. There are people missing, there are roads down. Like, how do you deal with that in the moment?
I'm glad that's a great question, Betsy. And I'll talk about my experience. And I alluded to this a little bit in the video. But as that weekend developed and once the rain had stopped, I got in my vehicle and I started just driving around because we had people out there fixing roads over that weekend, looking at the damage. And I just wanted to visit our crews to encourage them and give them a pat on the back and hand them a bottle of water and say, look, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for doing this, for putting your family life on hold. This was a holiday weekend. It was July 4th weekend. So they put their family lives on hold to help get these roads back open. And as I visited these different locations, everybody was in great spirits and making repairs. But when I came up on Cow Creek, I had on the side that I was able to get there. I was greeted with a number of first responders from fire departments and EMS staff who were there doing searches for people who had gone missing. And So for the students across the country, if you are not familiar with it, this had a devastating effect. There were like 130 lives lost in this, and a large campground of young girls in south of us, not in our district. A campground was swept away, and I think there were dozens. I don't remember the exact number, but dozens of young girls who were at this camp were swept away and ultimately lost their lives. But they're in our area as well. There are a number of people gone missing. And as I was traveling around looking at the roadway damage, thinking to my mind how to get these things fixed and open back up as quickly as possible. When I came upon these first responders, I greeted the fire chief who was there looking for people. And it actually hadn't even dawned on me that there were still first responders out there looking for people. And there was one of them who was a fire chief from Marble Falls, who was a city on the western part of this Cow Creek Bridge that was closed. He was swept away when he was out looking for people, and and to this day they've not found him. They have not found the chief, the fire chief from Marble Falls. But when I came up on the fire chief from a neighboring city, it was still raining like crazy. I got into his vehicle, and I'm there thinking about, all right, how are we going to get this bridge fixed? How are we going to get this open? How are we going to get this road fixed? And he just unloaded on me, not in a negative way, for about an hour. So I just sat in his truck for the better part of an hour, just listening to him vent and say that there were people that he had known personally that they were out looking for in this flood event, and just being there for him to share what he was going through took this thing in a complete different perspective for me that was way beyond getting roads fixed, that these were people's lives that were lost. And I believe the total count was like 130, 132 people who were lost in this event. But man, it really takes a different angle to it when you're sitting with the first responders looking for people. And that's the humanitarian piece of this, that we're trying to connect roads. We're trying to rebuild bridges so people can get on with their lives. But there's really a life-changing occurrence for those people who lost loved ones, and some of them were found. Some were found downstream. There were people that were found hanging onto trees that were found in the couple of days following this. But unfortunately, most of those who were gone missing were lost, and our thoughts and prayers still go out to those families as they deal with that months after the fact.
Of course, of course. Oh my goodness. So we had one other question that kind of relates to this, and that is there any specific thing that is our biggest problem for rescuing someone in a given amount of time? I mean, in this case, it's obvious we couldn't even have the road in order to get across to others, but in general, is there anything that kind of limits us in our rescue time?
So the TxDOT team, we are not first responders for rescue. We will get out there, we'll clear debris off roadways so the experts can do their job and get through to do that. But I would say the challenge is from their behalf, and even with ours, the challenge is not putting ourselves in danger and becoming one of those who becomes lost or puts themselves. So there's a really fine balance between getting out there and removing things, but not doing something that makes the problem worse, if you want to look at it that way. Now, our folks are out there on the front lines and removing things and getting roadways back into the shape that they can be, so people can do that. But we don't want to make the problem worse by doing something that now makes us one of those statistics. And I think the first responders, and just talking to them, that they walk that fine line as well. And that's actually what happened, from what I understand, to the fire chief from Marble Falls that was swept away. He was in his vehicle, and the waters were rising so quickly that he was on a roadway next to a stream, going down a road looking for people, and the waters rose and just carried his vehicle away. They found his vehicle. They did find his vehicle, and it was filled with mud and sediment, but he was not in it. So they continued to look for him. But just not putting yourself in that in harm's way to be one of those statistics that that adds to the devastation and adds to the rescue effort, but while still trying to find folks who may still be able to survive such an event is a really delicate balance that we need to that we need to manage.
For sure. Well, I have heard some really important takeaways that I wanted to summarize from the things that you said and talked about with us. And first of all, I want to say thank you. This has been so moving, just seeing everything that you and your team went through, but also knowing that it's not just about the pen and paper and calculations. It really is bigger than that. It's bigger than ourselves. And so here were the takeaways that I heard, and I'm sure there's many others that I missed here. But that engineering, it's about improving the quality of life. You know, there's something about inspiration that happens in times of need when people pull together, and that teamwork, it just makes amazing things happen. So the last one that I heard that was just incredible, and that is what you do matters, and that is for everyone here on this call. You know, what we do matters, and how we shape our future. So Mr. Ferguson, this has been such an honor to have you here with us at Engineering Tomorrow. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Jillian, and she can give the next steps for us.
Glad to do it. Thank you, Betsy.
Oh, Jillian, I think you're muted.
Of course I am, just over here talking to myself. I was thanking Mr. Ferguson for joining us today and sharing your story. Was just very inspirational. I want to thank all the students and teachers on this call, the ET staff for making it possible, and please join us. Next up is Astrodynamics event. You don't want to miss it on December 4th. We hope to see you back soon. Take care. Have a great weekend.